Welcome to One Man's Tracks for the 100th secondhand album review. To celebrate this milestone in true One Man's Tracks fashion, I spent the week learning about a band I really ought to have already known about. The CD stacks have thankfully continued to produce some fruitful bounties, and I have been introduced this week to one of Canada's most incredible progressive rock bands, the Tea Party. These three Windsor, Ontario natives that just seem destined to collide. Jeff Burrows, Stuart Chatwood, and Jeff Martin all played together as teenagers in bands, but didn't unite until after high school in 1990 when they played an extended jam session together, realized their chemistry clicked, and didn't waste a whole lot of time writing, recording, and releasing an independent self-titled debut the following year. The band would sign with EMI Records in 1993, and they'd re-record many of the songs from that eponymous debut and add in some new ones for this. Their major label debut, released in June of 1993, produced by the band member Jeff Martin, as is with all of the other Tea Party records. This is Splendor Solis. Adding on to their united do-it-yourself vision, you've got Stuart Chatwood playing a role in the artwork in all of their album releases as well. They're just clearly this driven and uncompromising group when it comes to their direction and ambitions. This headstrong and passionate trio of talented multi-instrumentalists are determined to explore and evolve the world of heavier experimental rock music. Their music, especially early on, is very evocative of some classic 70s influences like Hendrix, Zeppelin, and The Doors, and that's not the worst company to be in, but these guys can be sort of written off as just psych blues copycats if you're not paying too much attention. You can see that they are really obviously using that foundation that these classic artists have laid before them, and they've taken it and started to build their own unique sound off of it, slowly shedding their influences as they progress through their careers. Drawing influence as well from Middle Eastern and Indian music, using some jazzy and soulful touches here and there too. Their many sonic curiosities become more evident the deeper you dive into their catalog, with them experimenting with industrial electronics as well as a broader range of instruments. I can understand if you've only caught a brief glimpse of these guys' intense determination, it might come off as a tad pretentious or even forcefully profound, but after over 30 years of making music, it seems pretty obvious to me that these guys are just serious about making their honest and thoughtful mix that feels deep, mystical, and freeing. This is music for music lovers, and if you're interested in a band that consistently modernizes a classic sound and makes it their own, then I think the Tea Party are a band that's worth paying a little closer attention to. Maybe some of these classic Tea Party tracks off of this major label debut can help convince you of that. I think the epic opener, The River, is certainly one that can do a lot of work in that department. The band's first single ever is a statement. With its deep and winding psychedelic ambiance, it provides a marvelous introduction to Martin's ominous baritone and his intriguing lyricism, as well as a great intro to Burrows' impactful signature drum style. This one is probably the most memorable on the album, and I think that's evidenced by its 2 People's Choice Awards for favorite music video that it won. Then we move on to the dazzling, multi-phased hard rock ballad called Midsummer Day. It teases the listener in with some enchanting acoustic plucking and some charming vocals, but there's this spiraling breakdown that leads you to a moment of anxious uncertainty before the track then slips back into those beckoning acoustics, but you're just left gripping onto the remainder of the track here thanks to that energetic interjection. Now, a certain slant of light refracts this album's tone into a slightly less optimistic direction, with a song that has got to be about a woman's struggle with heroin. It's a topic that's been covered by nearly every rock band under the sun, but in pretty much every one of those cases, the song is pretty damn good, and this track is no exception to that. Jeff Martin is just so emotive, and his passion shines across this LP, and it comes across so clearly here. Then we get this lovely little instrumental called Winter Solstice, taking away from those drugged out vibes with this Gaelic or maybe Irish sensation. Am I being ignorant, not really knowing the difference? Are they the same thing, maybe? I think my ancestors are pretty disappointed in me here. I like it still, I just can't properly distinguish between the two if there's a difference. The record's grandest tale is told by the next song, Save Me. It's the single that broke them into the Australian market with its Jimmy Page-like bowed guitar stylings that lean heavily into those Indian influences. It's also got this chorus that hits like this eclectic Coldplay track, just big, bold, and captivating. The follow-up, Sun's Going Down, is a tremendously groovy, twangy blues rocker that takes its time before, in this time, sways in on a line that is pretty reminiscent of Elton John's Tiny Dancer, but then it chooses to kind of linger and stew in that opening, longing sensation. There's a lack of dynamicism in these two tracks that is absolutely made up for by Martin's heartfelt delivery and smooth, stringy fingers. I think these tracks are both beautiful and incredibly moving in their own right. You gotta get into this album. It's incredible. The Tea Party rock. Try it out. Come on, guys, I'm only halfway through and I can't say enough good things. Dreams of Reason wraps me up in a tickling atmospheric blanket of guitars before transitioning towards this great hard rock send-off that ships you towards the Tea Party's garden at Raven Skies. This one's a good time, pretty catchy, a little self-indulgent with the noodleage here and there, shifting from these slow rolling sections towards more energetic explorative solos. The second instrumental, Haze on the Hills, continues on some of that noodling feeling. I hesitate to call it such because of the usual connotations, but I do feel like in this case it is what it is, but it is more directed, more driven, more purposeful than their proggy contemporaries sometimes can be. This track serves as a calming last breath before we jump into the closer. In a similar lane to the track Save Me, the Majestic song sounds a bit like Kashmir Light. It doesn't go as hard as Zepp would, but it still is this beautifully written message of hope that provides a fun final flourish on this fantastic, well-conceived CD by an ambitious and uncompromising group of Moroccan rollers. These highly skilled artists compiled a hard rock adventure in a grunge-dominated musical landscape. This album was and is so good, and its gold and platinum sales prove that its ambitions weren't misdirected. Splendor Solis continues to fill listeners with wonder and nostalgia nearly 30 years later, and amazingly enough, its creators have held onto this energy and this passion and continue to make radical progressive rock music to this day. The band has released 7 more full-length albums and 3 EPs since this. Most recent album was an EU exclusive, Blood Moon Rising, that there's only bits and pieces on YouTube, so I'll link what I can down below, but you can check out their full-length EP that just came out last year, Sunshower, a complimentary EP to their 2019 Black River EP, that are just such a real treat for me and really any classic Tea Party fans that really enjoy their early energy and want to see it refreshed with modern production, just a little bit sharper. I think if you fell off maybe during their electronic era or after their 2005 hiatus, those are a great way to get back into them. Those years when the band was apart didn't stop them from putting out music, with Jeff Martin making a solo album as well as forming 2 bands, The Armada and Jeff Martin 777. Stuart, he continued to work on soundtracks for video games, and he most recently has continued to do it. He's got the Darkest Dungeon soundtrack that he made, and he's making a sequel to that right now, Bangers. And then we got the drummer, Jeff Burrows. He played drums on the Johnny Hollow album, as well as becoming part of the Canadian supergroup Crash Karma, all during those 5 or 6 years with them apart, and now back together since 2011. These guys are gonna keep on rocking forever, they say. Let me know what your favorite The Tea Party album is. Leave me a comment down below telling me about your song, your album, a great show you got to see. Apparently these guys have won a ton of people over with their phenomenal live performances. And since they're back together and still making music, I'm going to be seeking out some concerts that are hopefully going to be coming through Canada at some point. Fingers crossed. Let's hope that these guys can stick it out for as long as they can. Thank you a million for watching. Like the video. Check out some more albums. There's a list of all of them I've done over here, or one I think you might like. Subscribe for a weekly dose of throwback album nostalgia. Thank you a billion for watching. Come back for the next 100 episodes. I love you, and I'll see you next week. Welcome to my garden!